Hello, hello, welcome back. Well, hang on, I'm going to cue it, because it's only fair to give him more chance to prepare it. And here's the intro music. Hey, come on, Simon, first day on the job. Give him a round of applause. What a guy. Right, stop it, Simon, because that's enough now. Cheers, Simon. Right, I just want to tell you just quickly about tomorrow, because have we got a great guest for you next? Oh, yes. But tomorrow at 12 p.m. is, just to remind you, bright and early, you've got Paul will be interviewing Matt Householder, veteran of Atari, etc. And then at 2 o'clock, I'm there with Simon Phipps, total legend of British gaming, creative force behind Rick Dangerous, so that'll be then. But for now, get ready to welcome the man who proved that llamas, camels and laser beams do belong together. Please welcome the yak himself, it's Jeff Minter.
Oi, oi.
Here he is. It's only Jeff Minter. Right, have a seat if you want, bud. And if we get all carried away later, we'll stand up here. So when you talk about the early days of British gaming, there's only really a couple of names that come up. Yourself and probably Matthew Smith, Jeff Minter. Like, whenever you think of that phrase, bedroom to billions, you think of you guys. So my question is, what did you do with the billions?
I certainly never made any billions, but there was a period where we did all right. I used to do things like I took my entire family and all the wives and girlfriends and stuff on holiday for a couple of years running at the time when we actually had some money. That was nice.
Nice.
I think one of the most fun things we did was we did a high score competition for Revenge of the Mutant Camels on the day that it was launched. It was at an exhibition, and this lad won the competition. I think he thought he was going to win like a stack of games or something. Well, he did get a stack of games, but he also got a trip to Egypt on the Concorde to ride a camel around the pyramids.
Where is he now?
Maybe he's still there, I don't know.
Still there, right? So if we go back to, am I right saying late 70s when you start tinkering away with, I'm guessing ZX81, probably wrong, was it?
I actually started completely by accident. I was at sixth form college, and I was looking for, I can't remember how I was looking for, some classroom. I wandered into the wrong room. And there was a guy sat there down the end, and there was this weird thing that looked like a typewriter with a TV on top of it. And I thought, what's that thing? And I went over and had a look, and he was playing a game on it. And I'd seen video games, obviously I'd seen Pong and Space Invaders and that kind of thing. But I'd never considered them to be anything that you could actually make yourself. And so when he said, oh yeah, I typed it into this machine, I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting actually. I quite fancy learning about that. And he told me that there was a language called BASIC that you used to do it, and I went to the school library and nicked a book on BASIC. Went back home that night. My brother at the time had a job with the AA, and that's the AA, the driving place.
Not the other one.
Not Alcoholics Anonymous, I hasten to add. And he had a TI-59 programmable calculator, which had like a little folder full of programs you could enter into it. And I'd never programmed in either one of these two things, but I thought I'd set about trying to translate one to the other. So I wrote down a basic program, I think it was a biorhythm program, and went in the next morning, typed it into this machine, and it didn't work, of course. But then the lad who I'd seen typing in the game, or had been playing the game, he came in and he helped me, and we got it going, and it all went from there. The school only had this one Commodore PET, of course it was a Commodore PET machine. There was only one for the whole school, and you were only supposed to have like half an hour a day on it. You had to book up slots to go on it, but I just used to get into school early and program as much as I wanted then and stay late until the cleaners kicked me out. And I think my parents thought I was sick because, normally I wasn't the kind of guy to be spending extra time at school. And suddenly I was getting up super early and riding my bike in and spending all my waking hours there, and they didn't quite realise what was going on.
And if you look at like the stuff that, and don't take this offensively, if you look at some of the games that you've made, they're a bit out there. So my question is that because of the films you're into, the music you're into, or is it drugs?
People always assume that drugs must be involved, but certainly not until later on were any kind of drugs involved. At that point, it was. Obviously, the main influence was arcade games. We wanted to be able to make our own arcade-style games. And when I first started making games commercially, that was more or less what everybody did. Yeah. You did a copy of Defender, you did a copy of Centipede, whatever. And then Atari started getting heavy-handed about that. And so you had to introduce some changes. And I think I first started in that direction by doing Grid Runner. And I actually realised I was having more fun changing these things and putting more of myself in there than I was just trying to copy them. Plus, I was staying out of Atari's sites. And then when I put a camel in, people liked it, and it made the games very distinctive. I became, that guy who always puts beasts in his games. And that served me rather well, because it meant I was distinct. Llamasoft was distinct in its own way from everything else that was going on. So the more I got into the idea of that actually you've got more complete creative freedom to do whatever you want, the happier I was, really.
When was the moment where you realised I'm making some proper money out of this? Like this is what I'm doing now. This is what I do. People love it. There's checks coming in. When was that moment where you thought, oh shit, yes, this is it, man?
Well, I mean, the first computer exhibition we went to was, I think, June 1982, and we went up there with some tapes and a crappy VIC-20 Defender game, and we sold all the tapes, and there was an American guy in a suit there, and suddenly he's approaching me and saying, can you put this on a ROM cartridge, because we want to sell it in the USA? And I didn't know how to do that, but I'll say yes and I'll find out later, the way you do. And he came back to meet my parents, and I think that was the point where my parents realised something was going on there. There is a guy in a suit who wants to sell his stuff in America. But the moment where it really actually it went bananas, really, I suppose, was when I did Grid Runner. And a Grid Runner, it took a week to make, start to finish. I started on a Monday and finished on the Sunday evening, something like that. And I sent it out to the US guy, not thinking that much about it. And then I got a phone call from him like 4 o'clock in the morning. He was like, this is great, this is going to do really well. And I was like, okay. Then I went to bed, back to bed, and then I got up and had my breakfast and a cup of tea and remembered it. I'd written it down by the phone. Yeah. And he was as good as his word. I mean, they published that game, and it went to number 1 in one of the US software charts. And I always say that was the best week's work I've ever done in my life. Jesus.
But it's nice to be in a Blackpool as well, isn't it? So if you think around that time, early 80s, was there any other coders or people that you were kind of in the circles of, hanging around with, going for drinks with? Who did you know?
Well, I mean, Tony Crowther. Me and Tony Crowther were great mates. People like Andy Brayburke, we used to hang out. Matthew Smith, of course, he was around, and he was a lovely lad, he really was. What I liked about them was that although we were all technically competitors, we all got on. We were all just a bunch of kids who somehow found ourselves in this fantastic position. And so, there was lots of going to the bar and maybe the occasional bit of a recreational cigarette, these things happen. But we all got on. We didn't feel like we were fighting against each other. Well, apart from maybe Interceptor Micros, who had the hates for me, because.
Well, so was there? You said there wasn't much rivalry. Did you play each other's games? Like, what did you think of? What did you think of like Jet Set Willy? Do you think that was all right?
Oh yeah. Obviously, I'd play all the good games. Yeah. I liked Matthew Smith's games because he had a similar kind of sense of humour to me. I think they were quite Python-esque in their own way as well, which is a term that's sometimes been used to describe some of my work, like stuff like Hoverbother and things like that.
What's the best game you've ever played? I'm going to put this the right way. What's the best game you've ever... No, I'm still working on it. What game have you played that is the best game that you've not made?
That's
it. Yeah, what's the best game?
I think probably one of my favourite games ever has got to be Robotron by Eugene Jarvis, because Eugene Jarvis is my god, basically. He is my chief inspiration. And yeah, when I went to America last year, and I got to hang out with him for a day, he was very graciously showed me around his factory where he makes his arcade games. Took me to the biggest arcade in the world, which is near Chicago, and walked in there, and it was like being with royalty. It was like, oh, it's Eugene, and there's an entire row of his games there, and I played doubles with him at Robotron. He beat me. But I mean, that was like, I couldn't have dreamed of anything better than playing doubles with the creator of Robotron.
But say if you were like queuing up for a drink at the bar, which will take quite a while.
Yeah.
If you're queuing up for a drink here and people see you at the bar, that's how they feel about you, Jeff.
Yeah, but I'm not saying calibre as Eugene bloody Jarvis.
Come on.
And I can actually die happy now because I was talking to Eugene and he's seen my game Llamatron, and he's not offended by it. In fact, he said he thought it was the only decent sequel to Robotron that had ever been made.
Well, there you go.
And I will take that from my God.
Yeah. Probably the game I've played the most of yours is Tempest 2000.
Yeah.
Why is it so good?
It's not just the gameplay. It's the way it all fits together. It's the music as well. It's the whole package. And again, I'll talk about this later. This is where the two sides of my interest really start to come together. The gameplay side of things and the kind of trippy light synth side of things. This was the first instance where they really started to coalesce. But I mean, I have to give full credit to Imagitech who did the music, because without that music, it wouldn't have been half the game it is. That it's just the way the music fits the game so well.
Jeff's lined up a short presentation, by the way, about the whole light synth visuals. You're interested in that and where it's going, where it is now. Big part of your life, isn't it? It's a massive part of your life, Jeff.
It is. It actually goes further back than video games. It goes further back than computers. It goes back a hell of a long while. I will tell you about it in a bit.
So I want to cover everything off before we get to that. So I want to just talk about how in later years you done things like Space Giraffe and Polybius. Can we talk about Polybius?
Yeah, of course.
So I think that's the perfect game for you to make, because you kind of are Polybius. Did someone come to you specifically, or was it your idea to go, there's this crazy game that doesn't exist, I want to make it exist? How did
it's an urban legend that's been around for quite a long time. As such, it's a completely blank page. Anybody can reimagine it any way they want to. I think a couple of other people have done their own versions as well, and that's kind of nice. You're not treading on anybody's toes by doing a version of Polybius. And I just thought it would be tremendous fun. And I wanted to do some more VR stuff, and I thought it was the kind of game that would fit very well in VR. And yeah, it was a blast doing it. And I was fully surprised when Trent Reznor asked me to do a music video with it. That was fantastic.
And I'm skipping here because I want to give. So most recently, it says here 2023, you did Aka R.
Yeah.
And that's with your pal, isn't it? Is it Ivan?
Yeah, Ivan.
So tell me about Ivan and the role he plays at Llamasoft, and then tell me about Aka R and how it was received.
Ivan is basically our technical director. He came over in 2003, I think it was. And his first task was to take a light synth that was running on the GameCube and implement it on a prototype of the Xbox 360 and do it in the space of like 10 days. So he's going from one system he's never seen before to one system that hardly anybody's ever seen before, which doesn't officially exist, and has to port this fairly complicated thing between them. So yeah, he hit the ground running. We nailed that, and as a result of that work, we got the job to do the visualizer for the Xbox 360, which was obviously very good for us. And now, well, his official title is technical director. He basically looks after what we call the Neon engine. We're actually upgrading it to a new engine now, which I'll talk about later. But for the last sort of 10 years or so, we've been using this thing called the Neon engine, which basically lets me code to an intermediate platform, and which he maintains, and then he can then easily port whatever I do to loads of different systems. So whenever we do a game now, you immediately get the Xbox version, the PS5, PS4, the Switch, all the Steam, everything. So it means I only have to write the game once, and then he does all the hard work of making it work on everything else.
Who is the yak?
It's me. I'm the ox. I've been bovine all my life. I think a bovine suits me, kind of large, not particularly pretty, not particularly smart, but I will plod along and I'll get the work done. I'm very patient. And hairy, yeah.
And hairy.
And probably smelly as well, but there we are.
Jeff, is this a typical scene?
It's a typical summer scene, yeah.
Where do you live now?
I live in slightly southwest Wales. I've got 6 pet rams. I've got a pet donkey, and just earlier on last week, we got a pony. I did have 2 llamas, but the last one died last year.
Oh, well done for bringing that up. Who was that?
Well, but the thing is, if she'd lived another 6 months, she'd have probably been the oldest llama in the UK. Oh. So she had an extremely long life, and even when she passed, she had no illness. She just kind of, she was fine. She was fine. Then she went to sleep one night and didn't wake up. Which, if you've got to go, then very peacefully after a long life is about the best way to do it, really. So I miss her, of course, but I don't feel too sad about it. She had a good life.
Oh, okay. Anyway, right, I'm going to do a game with you now because I'm really interested to see your talk on the synth music. But I want to do a quick game I do with all our guests, where I ask ChatGPT for some of your lesser-known games. I'll say the game, and I want you to give me a couple of words about it.
Okay, I doubt ChatGPT has even bloody heard of me. Yeah,
I thought it would help us recover from the llama death. Okay, here we go. Well, let's start with one that's not off the beaten track, and you've mentioned it, but classic Commodore 64, Hover Bother. Give me a couple of words.
Hover Bother is a particular favourite of mine because it was designed between me and my dad.
That's ace.
Yeah.
That's lovely. See, 1 minute you're down, next minute you're up. Okay, Psychedelia 1984. Now, this was one that it's not quite a game, it's more of a demo of the music and things, yeah.
Well, this was the first light synth I made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when I say Psychedelia, what do you think of?
I think of all the light synths that it's led to. That was the first step on a long road, basically.
Mama Llama 1985.
That was controversial because I remember Zapp famously didn't like it. I think I was maybe being too experimental. One of the things about those days was that you really wanted to try something new every time you went out, and maybe I was being a bit too experimental with the controls. Perhaps they had a point. It is tricky to learn, but you can't have a hit every time you make a game.
Iridis Alpha.
Oh, I like that one. Yeah, that was a bi-directional scrolling thing, 2 ships at once, planet surface. And I remember we released it through Houston, and they screwed up because they added their protection to it, and then they didn't respect the fact that I had some code for the bonus round underneath one of the ROMs, and they didn't save it. So when they launched it at a computer show, people were buying it and taking it home, and then finding out as soon as it got to bonus round, it would crash. Oh. And when we found that out, we were upstairs with Llamasoft. We immediately stopped selling them. So, we can't sell you these. We've got to get them to fix it first. Houston were downstairs, and they were carrying on selling them. I was saying, that's a bit naughty, because people are going to go home and it's going to crash.
Oh. Moose Life 2020.
I really like Moose Life. It's in
VR?
Yeah, you play it in VR. And one thing I'll tell you about, if you play it in VR, there's a surprise if you turn around and look behind you. But it's...
well, you can't just say that. What was behind you?
Well, there is a large something there that's watching you all the time. But yeah, it's kind of inspired by Juno First. You know the arcade game Juno First?
Anyone know that? It's in the hall. It's in the hall?
Yeah. It's a good game. And I will say that it contains my favourite weapon ever, which is a power-up called Stag Party, which basically means everything you shoot turns into stags that run away.
That's cool. Right, I'm gonna leave that at that. I just want to just quickly get a round of applause, please, for Jeff.
Jeff. Diolch yn fawr.
So, Jeff's going to do you a little presentation on some of his work that he's been doing, what we talked about earlier, but also stick around because after that, we're then going to come to you for your questions. So that gives you a bit of time to think about it. But for now, and I know Simon will be all over switching this over to a PowerPoint presentation. Hey, look at Simon, eh? Right, folks, I'll leave you in Jeff's capable hands.
Okay. Right, let me just turn this thing on, make sure it's working. Think it's working? Okay. So yeah, basically I wanted to talk about light synths because they're a big part of my career that often gets overlooked because everybody talks about the games, but they kind of it all fits together in the end, which I hope I'll show you. So this stuff began way before I ever even saw a computer, and way before I should hasten to add I'd ever taken any drugs. I was 11 years old, God I'm old, when Dark Side of the Moon came out. Praise be to Floyd. And this was the first band that I ever really got into. I mean, as a child, you like various novelty records and things like that, but the first music that I really seriously got into was Pink Floyd. And there's this one track called On the Run, which has this repeating synth riff with filter sweeps and everything. It sounds really good. It's very driving, sort of forward kind of sound. And I'd lie in my darkened bedroom listening to this riff, to this track. And I would see geometric shapes in my head. I would see sort of abstract shapes rushing past me in my head as I was listening to this synth music, and nothing else had ever done that to me before. And so I used to lie in my bedroom and go on trips in my little 11-year-old head. And then a few years later, I was at school, secondary school, 14 years old. We had this thing called a foreign exchange where you'd have students from different countries would come over and stay with families in the UK. And I was assigned this French guy, Eric Beloche, I think his name was. And he was tall, he was handsome, he was mature beyond his 14 years. And all the girls in the school absolutely fancied him. So because he was being hosted with our family, I got invited to this party where nobody was interested in me, they were all interested in him. So I was there pretty much not really knowing anyone. I wasn't there with my normal friends and I was on my own. And it was my first exposure to alcohol. They had cider there, and so I was bored on my own, a bit embarrassed to be there and not being particularly well known. So yeah. I thought, I'll try some cider. And oh, that's interesting. I'll try some more cider. Oh, that's interesting. And now I don't feel so weird. Well, I felt weird, but weird in a different way. I didn't feel so embarrassed. But believe me, I became very embarrassed very soon. It was terrible. Throwing up all over the place, making a complete dick of myself. Every time I walked into school for like the whole of the rest of that term, I was just full of shame and embarrassment. It was terrible. Puked all over my parents' car and everything. It was always bad. But on the way to that horrible state, they had a little disco there, and they had these flashing lights. And yeah, these things are flashing in time to the music. And it kind of connected to those trips I used to go on in my head to the Pink Floyd. I think there must be a better way of articulating this kind of thing. And I wanted a machine that could kind of make these head trips I used to go on, make them visible. And ever since then, when I was in school, whereas most people would be daydreaming about being in a rock band or something, I'd be daydreaming about doing something with some machine that hadn't been invented yet, and some big screen that hadn't been invented yet, and somehow externalising these trips. So before I even saw a computer, I was thinking about this stuff. And then once I actually started programming and did some games, at one point I thought, why don't I start to try and apply some of this, use the computer to resurrect this old idea and start experimenting with it. And so I made this psychedelia, a quick 1K demo. And it was basically painting with light. And then when you put on a bit of Floyd and started interacting with it, painting with light, it felt really good. In fact, it felt so good, I felt that it was almost like I discovered some new art form. And at first, I didn't even want to sell it because I thought, I can't own this. This is something entirely new. I can't claim it. It's not mine. I should give it to the world. And so I coded up a 1K demo And it was published as a listing in magazines. And God, it must have had the patience to type in 1K of machine language, but people did. And yeah, it went well with Floyd and the occasional recreational cigarette. Yeah. And it felt like something genuinely new. And then we did really do a commercial release. My parents had to argue with me, said, look, just make a better version and sell it, you'll be all right. We ported it to a bunch of systems, to VIC-20, to MSX, I think it was BBC, Specky, of course. And the reviews were divisive because it was kind of new. It wasn't a game. And I was known for games, and people were like, what is this hippie shit? That was in one of the Spectrum magazines. It's like, oh, God. But then again, the best review I ever had, some guy said he found mere words too cumbersome to describe the brilliance of the concept. And I'm like, okay. So it's either really terrible or it's fantastic. Well, we can carry on. We can carry on. It's worth further development. So took advantage of the Atari 8-bit, which was a lovely machine. Not very popular in this country, but it was, to those who knew it, it was really nice. And it suited the project better than the Commodore 64 because it was nice to have more colours than fingers for once. And it had this very nice display list architecture where you could make sort of fake curved screens and interlace stuff and use the hardware to generate symmetry so you could move more stuff around. It was very pretty. And the new name reflected the improved chromatic performance. And then the ST came out, and we did a version on the ST, which allowed better control. You had a mouse control to be able to, you weren't restricted to the 8 joystick directions, basically. And you could put foreground and background pictures, and colour cycling covered a multitude of sins as well. We hired the London Planetarium for the launch party. That was fantastic fun. And we went in there with 2 big Barco-Vision projectors. I remember the guys who hired them off were trying to interface these things to the Atari ST like 5 minutes before my performance was due to start, and people were waiting outside. They were still there with soldering irons and stuff, but they did actually get it together. And I actually ended up buying one of those Barcos. And then I did Tripotron, which was the biggest thing by far I'd ever made. It took a year to make, including a month to write the manual. It was a massive overhaul and extension. It had its own programming language that you could write multi-threaded programs in that could generate graphics offline, it could sequence animations, you could control the machines across the MIDI network. It was extensive. I even had an experimental version that would generate music while you were actually making the patterns, which is something I'm coming back to. And we did a collaboration with this guy, Adrian Wagner, who is actually a descendant, or was, unfortunately he's passed, but he was an actual descendant of the famous musician Wagner. We did this project called Merak, which was an audio-visual collaboration. He did the music, I did all, this is all done on Tripotron. I had 5 STs connected through a custom-made video mixer, all sequenced over MIDI. We played it, did it live at Ars Electronica. Yeah, I thought you might like to see where I lived when all this was going. This was where Tempest 2000 was made, and Llamatron was made. It was made in this place. It's a remote valley. There's only about sort of 5 houses there. It's a lovely place. I miss it. I wish I hadn't moved away from there, actually. And so, yeah, I found a nice part of the way. I've been needing to find somewhere to live. It's a beautiful, quiet valley. You might like to see some of my furniture. Mac 3 and Stargate, and then there's the dining area. Star Wars and Fluffy Camel. This was the main, sort of my main cockpit. We had the Barco over there. There's supposed to be a laser on there, it's not working. Maybe it just doesn't show up on there. It doesn't show up over on that screen, that's all. Yeah, the Barco. That thing on the desk is a video mixer, the sliders on it. So yeah, it was a nice place. And I also found out there was a guy called John Whitney who was doing similar kind of experimentation to me. So it kind of validated where I thought I'd been on my own experimenting with this stuff. To find out this guy who was he's quite a famous film effects guy. He'd done a lot of the stuff for 2001. The Space Odyssey, and so coming across this book and finding out he was also looking in the same kind of direction made me feel like maybe I wasn't such a nutcase to be pursuing this stuff. And I met a couple of Inmos guys who'd seen some of the work I was doing with Triptron, and they said, do I want a transputer rig to play with? And of course I said, yes, please. And the result was VLM0, some of the screens you can see here. They introduced me to Occam2 and rave culture. That was good. And I ended up, one of the guys actually ended up being sent to the US 6 months before I went out there. And he was sent out there to help with a new startup. And then when I came out there, I used to hang out with him a lot. And he took me to see this company he was helping to bring up. And it was a new company. They only had a fairly small office at that point, like a handful of people. They didn't have any silicon or anything. And he was really pissed off. He said he was the only one of the people who'd been sent out there to bring this company up who hadn't been given any shares in it. It was NVIDIA. Anyway, so yeah, this was actually used by the Shaman, this VLM0, and at one point I even had this plugged into my knackered old 286, because I got invited out to Paisley Park to demonstrate it to a certain purple gentleman. And Levi from New Power Generation had that thing plugged into my 286, which was quite bizarre. And it's quite weird. When you meet Prince, you don't speak to him directly. He's got like an interpreter. I mean, you speak in the same language, but he won't speak to like somebody else directly. But yeah, they did actually use it on one of the UK tours, I think. But without these things, then there wouldn't have been Tempest 2000, because obviously the lights and stuff and Tempest and stuff. And yeah, I've got to be honest and include this. Partly because it's a Mitzi. And the reason for that is, obviously, I fell in with the Inmos guys, and we started doing projections at raves and things like that. And if you're working in that kind of scene, you're going to get exposed to that kind of stuff. And I hadn't really understood electronic music. I was brought up with, rock and roll, or Pink Floyd, and obviously heavy metal and rock and roll and traditional sort of, 70s music, 70s kind of stuff. And when rave music started to come out, I actually looked down my nose at it. I thought, this isn't proper music at all. It's just repetitive nonsense. And then I had an experience, and I understood what it was all about. And it was shortly after that experience, I started gathering together, some of my favourite rave tunes and sending them to the guys who were making the music for Tempest 2000. Saying, well, this is the stuff which I really like at the moment. Will you do me something that's got that same kind of energy? Well, the job they did. So there wouldn't have been Tempest 2000 without all those things. And then we got into the firmware Atari. We got a meeting with Jack Trammell, which was scary. Jack's quite a scary guy. But TTK had done well, and so I think there was a little bit of a shine on me. So they actually listened to our ideas, and we said that we could build one of these things. It was one of the first visualizers, actually, into the Jaguar CD-ROM, which does look like a toilet. Come on, it does, doesn't it? Especially have a cartridge on the back. It's like a little cistern. And it was made in Wales with the final integration done in Sunnyvale. And Leonard Trammell, people say of Leonard Trammell that he was difficult to get on with and a bit prickly, but he was the most technical of all the Trammells. And I got on really well with him, and he absolutely loved this thing. I would go into my cubicle at Atari to work on the integration and find him already there, firing up the prototype and dancing around and playing his CDs through it. So yeah, he loved it. And it's primarily a visualizer. I didn't even know it was Atari's first visualizer. They had this bloody thing, which they'd made back in the 1970s when everybody at Atari smoked weed. And I had no idea this existed. It was never released in Europe. It was a crazy thing. And then Atari fell to bits while I was there. I didn't have anything to do with that, but it did fall to bits. And I left with some of the engineers to go to VM Labs, and they made the newer multimedia processor. I did Tempest 3000 and VLM2. It's still primarily a visualizer. It's kind of getting away from my vision of light synth. They're different things. And then people take the piss out of the new one because it failed. It did fail, but as a processor, it was very interesting. Most of what you see there was actually done with shader code. what we would now call shader code, where you do a significant computation per pixel. The vectors, for example, are done with distance fields. The work is divided up into an array of, there were four CPUs in it, effectively. Each one only had 4K of instruction RAM and 4K of data RAM. And there was no GPU, it was a 54 megahertz chip. And so you had to be DMAing in code overlays and chunks of screen and working on them. And still we were able to get working games out using shader techniques on a 54 megahertz chip. But the trouble was, I've got more fingers, there existed people capable to actually do that. And this was a time when people wanted to just load up a C development system and coding should be easy, like it was on the PlayStation. So everybody went to the PlayStation and the new one languished, unfortunately. But anyway, I liked it. Light sensor visualizer is not really the same thing. You don't really see visualizers that much anymore. I think people have got a bit bored with them because they're basically passive devices. And people look at them and they're pretty and they go, oh, that's nice. But it's not the same as a light synth, which is meant to be interactive. Because when you're actually using a light synthesizer, you are creatively engaged in a process along with the music. You feel like a part of the performance and not just a passive listener or viewer. And it feels really good. It does. It feels lovely. Of course, Unity is the game with the convergence, which didn't happen. I was going to do this game for Lionhead on the GameCube. I want to do something that's brought together. You can turn the music down. It doesn't have to be up. Oh no, somebody's phone. I thought it was this for the moment. Fair enough. So yeah, I wanted to do something which brought together the two halves.
I've just been giving him dirty looks for about. This phone's going off.
Okay. So yeah, I wanted to integrate the two sides of this thing, and I tried to do this game, which proved to be a bit ambitious. It was over-ambitious, really. I'd been working on it for 2 years and still hadn't finished it. But fuck's sake.
I'm going to make you feel bad, though, because it's my 8-year-old daughter. And her phone gets through the do not disturb.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That dead llama.
By the way, do you realise how difficult it is to dispose of a dead llama? It's a lot of effort. Anyway, so it's meant to be an abstract semi-procedural shooter with genetic evolution of the enemies. I couldn't finish it because I didn't really have enough time. The GameCube would have been dead by the time I'd finished it, so it got cancelled. But one of the things that fell out of it was I was using, the idea was I would use light synth tech to make dynamic procedural textures that would go on everything in the game, basically. So the light synth stuff would be integrated to the game, and as the music played, all this would pulse in time to the game. And so I had to make a light synth. And Pete Hawley, who was my producer at Lionhead, had said, okay, you're making a light synth for this game. You're going to do the visuals at a Walk Records rave. I'm like, okay. Hadn't really meant it to be for that, but we'll do it. And I had to turn this text generator into a usable light synth and do it in a hurry, because this was coming up, it was in December. And my mates would come down and I'd show them what was going on with this new light synth. And I put multiple controllers on it, and we all started playing it. And it got to the point where, yeah, we did the rave. It was me and 3 other guys. We went down. We each had controllers. We had like a hidden GameCube, the dev kit in the corner, and a big projector, obviously. And people started to watch this stuff, and they absolutely loved it. And then we had the Wavebird wireless controllers, because each one of the controllers controlled different aspects of the display. Basically, anybody could pick up one of these controllers and start using it and realise that they were actually controlling the visuals. And so we just passed these out on the dance floor, and people were absolutely loving it. There was another visual crew there that night, and they gave up halfway through and said, no, we give up, you've won. So yeah, we absolutely bossed that rave. It was fantastic. And the 3 guys and me, we became the VLM crew. And they would come down to my place every week for maybe a year and a half. None of us ever experienced anything like this. It was fantastic. We would just get together and we would play light synth to mixes of techno music all night, every night, for every weekend. And each of us learned our speciality. Somebody had tunnels, somebody had the camera, somebody had the feedback, and so we each developed our own set of skills. And eventually, the word about these nights got around, and we had some games biz people come down to have a look, including a guy from Microsoft. And he said, well, this is very cool stuff. He was quite blown away by it and said, if you can demonstrate that you can put this stuff onto the Xbox 360, this is where Ivan came in. He said, if you can demonstrate a port of this running within a couple of weeks, then we'll see what we can do with regard to getting you into the Xbox 360 firmware. So Giles did this, he hit the ground running, and we got in. It was fantastic. And at this point, it was like I'd made that machine I first dreamed of when I was 14 years old. Effectively, this is what it was. A machine to externalise those head trips, and we were going to massively distribute it. And I always call it our biggest success and our biggest failure because it was the most widely distributed Llamasoft software ever, but we had to make it into a visualizer. We had to make it passive in order for it to go into the Xbox, because they wanted a visualizer and not a light synth. So although it still had the light synth functionality, it was never documented, and hardly anybody ever knew about it. So yeah, I made a great visualizer, but visualizers aren't really my thing. So yeah, it was nice. We made a bit of money on it, but not as much as you might expect, but you know. Anyway, life goes on after that. Neon became our game engine. Did Space Giraffe, which is another attempt to bring the two sides of things together in the game and the light synth stuff, where the light synth stuff was actually part of the difficulty of the game, which some people hated and some people loved. Polybius is also built on top of this same Neon core, which gave us the chance to work with Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails. That was fantastic. He was a lovely guy to work with, proper gentleman. Now our design style is basically, we're heading towards Unity, even though Unity was never published. The concept of Unity, of bringing the light synth and the game stuff together, is more or less everything we do now. We did some experimentation that was never released. We added video input to the light synth, to the Neon light synth. I did a touchscreen one that was never released. We made a VLM experimental light synth in VR that was fantastic fun. And a couple of years ago, I was working on something else, and a new light synth started to come out. And this was it after a month. This is my friend Corruptor, who's DJ, came down and had a bit of a party. And it has physical controls. You can see it. If you come around our stand, I can show you the controls that I use for this thing. And it's a proper light synth. That one was only single channel. The one we've got now is a multi-channel monster. It can do all kinds of crazy, crazy stuff. And with all the waveform generation stuff that's going on in there, we intend to turn it into an audio synthesizer too. So you have visual synthesis and audio synthesis in the same engine. Because I'm interested in procedural music, I've already got sequencers and envelope generators in there. I'm going to do prop music generation in there as well. And given that all that's in there, I'm going to build a game right inside it. Why not? I mean, it's going to be... What I like about it is that it's entirely our own. There's nobody else's middleware or anything in there. It's all Llamasoft. So that's going to be fun. And so yeah, this is going to be effectively the real Unity. Is it a light synth? Is it an audio synth? Is it a music tool? Is it a game engine? Yes, you know. And hopefully one day I will do Space Giraffe 2 in it, because I'm determined that before I die I've got to do Space Giraffe 2. And I'm getting old. Better hurry up, haven't I? And so yeah, I'll still plod along. It's the most complex thing I've ever built, I think, since Tripotron. We do have a game in mind for it. I can't say what it is yet, because it's going to be another Atari game though. Beyond that, who knows? But moving forward, whatever we do, it's going to have light synth in it, so it's always going to be Unity, effectively. And that's it. Diolch yn fawr.
Jeff, what is, stick around folks, what is currently the best way for people to experience light synth? What's the best way? They come and see you in the hall, obviously, but like online.
Yeah, I mean, you can see its use in games. If you play stuff like our new iRobot has got a fair bit of light synth stuff in it, and it's got a special mode where you can just sit and fiddle with a few of the parameters. It's not a full light synth, but you can fiddle with a few of the parameters. Or dig out your old Xbox 360 and have a look at the visualizer in there. And if you plug multiple controllers into it, you will find that you can actually control all the little bits and pieces of the effects.
Cool. We could fit in some quick questions. Hands up, go. Nice. Right, I'm going to come over here, sorry, first.
Hi.
Hi.
I recently upgraded my phone. It's now Android 16, and I was gutted when Gridrunner wouldn't install. Do you have any plans to tweak it so it'll work with the modern operating systems on mobile?
I don't know. I mean, I'll have to check it out. I'm on Android myself, but I haven't tried to sideload any of my old games onto it yet. I'll have to have a look. One thing we did wonder about doing is maybe taking some of the old stuff that we did for iOS and doing ports to a modern platform. I mean, we kind of maybe thought we might even try and approach the what they call Evercade people. Maybe a Llamasoft iOS/Android Evercade collection might be a thing. But I think we need to speak to the right people there first and let them know what we intend to do to see if they're interested in having us do that. But I think that would be a nice way to expose those old games.
Hi. What were the rave records that you mentioned inspired the music that you wanted for your Tempest?
Oh, there was all sorts. There was a fair bit of Prodigy in there. There was, I mean, I had like a rave compilation thing, and I was just taking stuff off there and put my favourite track. I mean, some of it was quite obscure. Some of it came from an album which, when I'd been out to Atari to work on the prototype Jaguar, one of the guys there was a musician, and he gave me this album called Below San Onofre. And there were some tracks on there with bands with names like Sweat Engine and Tit Wrench and things like that. But you know, it was all inspiring stuff, and so I just threw together a bunch of stuff. But yeah, Prodigy was definitely well forward in that kind of mix. I mean, these days, my favourite band I think is Underworld. I absolutely love Underworld. I've seen them no end of times, and they impress me not only because their music is fantastic and full of energy, and the guys, when you see them perform, are obviously so delighted to be performing. They're loving every minute of it. They're also older than me.
Have you thought about plugging in sort of like motion control, like Kinect used to be, into things like light synth, so people dancing can actually control the light synth?
We actually had that with the experimental VR light synth, because you could basically navigate the parameter space not just with the joysticks on the controllers, but with the orientation and position of the controllers themselves. And so when we were talking about our experience in it, we'd say, like, oh, do you remember this, that thing that was over here? That looked really good. And then I saw something really nice that was up there somewhere. And it was almost like you had to physically contort yourself into a different language to describe where you'd been. And yes, the act of using it was a bit like controlling lights with dance. And that's definitely something which is going to be a feature of the new one, because everything we do now will have a VR mode. So yes.
That's great. Hiya. You've got such a really distinctive art style. If someone was starting out making games and lights, I mean, how would you advise someone if they were starting out?
Just experiment, basically. I mean, a lot of the light synth stuff was just me saying, what happens if I do this? Don't feel that there's a particular right way of doing anything. I mean, just get your hands on some code and get your hands dirty and try stuff out and see what falls out. Sometimes what starts as a glitch can turn into really nice effect. I would say, get on shaders, start doing shader language, because shader language is really interesting, and that's where you can do a lot of really interesting manipulation for a fairly small amount of code.
Anybody else with a question?
Hi, Jeff. Any plans to bring some of the VR stuff to something like a MetaQuest headset where they're quite a low price point and quite accessible?
Yeah, we actually already did an experiment. We ported Aka R to run natively on the Quest. But the trouble with the Quest is that they've got this two-tier system, haven't they? You can't just say, well, okay, I'll finish my game, publish it on your thing. They might banish you to this sort of weird place that not many people know about, and your stuff has to languish there, and that's kind of been a bit off-putting. And not just to me, but to Atari, whose responsibility it would be to actually publish this stuff. And so they haven't actually managed to make a deal happen yet that would validate us doing any more ports onto it. I really like the hardware. I've got Quest 3 myself and we use it all the time. It's fantastic. We should meet up for Walkabout Mini Golf one day.
Jeff, where can I buy your jumper?
You can get it online. I just basically, I normally wear Llama jumpers, but they're all supremely knackered now. They've fallen to bits. I've worn them to death. I needed a new jumper. I just looked up sheep jumper and found this. It was like 80 quid. It's really nicely made. Merino wool. It's lovely.
Quick.
Bringing it back to your initial inspiration whilst laying there, listening to Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
What setup would you have today, knowing what you know now, having produced the software that you've produced now, to listen to Pink Floyd as you're lying in your bedroom? How would you have that set up?
Well, I think I would probably like to be in VR at that point, really. I'd like to have a VR license set up and be able to fully surround myself with what I was creating. Because the thing about that track On the Run is it was always a driving track. It was always like you were always flowing through. And somebody asked me when I was in Sweden last week what game I thought most reflected that sort of dynamic, which I first thought about when I was listening to that music. And I think it's not Space Giraffe, because Space Giraffe is a series of static things. You arrive on a platform, you do your stuff, and then you go. It's Polybius, because you're constantly moving forward like that. And so, yeah, if I was able to listen to Dark Side of the Moon and use a light synth, it would be a VR light synth.
Okay, so he didn't make it from bedrooms to billions, but he did make it from bedrooms to Blackpool.
Hey!
Had that one waiting for a while. Everyone, what an hour that was. That was fantastic. Everyone, Jeff Minter!
Cheers. Thank you.
That was ace. Now, I just want to remind you that tomorrow we've got a talk starting at 12 o'clock with Matt Householder, and then Simon Phipps is with me at 2. If you can just stay 1 second, something that the organisers just wanted me to say is that we've lost a few people in the kind of retro gaming community this last year, and we just want to mention a few people. First off, one of the chaps I interviewed last year, he was just such a nice bloke, Martin Brown from Team 17. We've unfortunately lost. I just wanted to give him a round of applause, if you would. It was such a nice... Also, I know you'd want me to mention, a lot of you know Billy Hudson from Game Chasers. John Lamiter, we lost as well. Desert Island Games, J76 Gaming. And Patrick Hicker Jr. from PAC-QC as well, folks. But listen, get back out there in the hall, enjoy the love, enjoy how much fun this is. You can also meet Jeff, he's in the hall as well. You can look at some of his stuff too. But for that, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow.